name is Mariette Geldenhuys. I'm a lawyer in Ithaca, New York. I've lived in Ithaca for 22 years now. Originally from South Africa and studied law there, qualified there. Went to England as a student on a scholarship for 2 years, and then from there made it to the United States and started practicing here. My practice right now is, I would say, 90% collaborative law and mediation. I'm moving it in the direction of 100%. And I do family law. I also do a lot of work with lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender clients. I use the LGBT abbreviation. And I also work in other areas. I work with small business owners. I work in civil cases, primarily related to people who own small businesses, trying to get them off the ground, and then also when they run into disputes and trouble, I'm dealing with that as well. I also work in municipal law, which is a conflict-rich area, and that I find ties in with the rest of my practice. My focus in all my practice areas is on peaceful and respectful resolution of disputes. And the way I practice now, and the place my practice is at right now, is very, very different from where it was 6.5 years ago. And the transformation of my practice of law starts about a year and a half before that. I have a friend who is in the same meditation group that I'm in Ithaca, and we were talking one day, and she was doing a graduate degree in nonprofit management and told me that she was doing a project on spirituality in the workplace, which I found really interesting. And then she said, oh, by the way, in the course of doing that, I noticed that there's this organization called the International Alliance of Holistic Lawyers. You should check it out. And I was stunned because I'd never seen the words holistic and lawyer in the same sentence. So I thought I really needed to look into this. At that point in my practice, I was doing probably 70 to 80% family law, all contested, nasty court battles. I was experiencing a lot of burnout. I was frustrated with the behavior of my colleagues. I was frustrated with my own behavior. I tried to not get sucked into the conflict, but you had to act in an aggressive way to a certain extent to be an effective advocate in the court system. And I really felt like I was at war with myself, that my spiritual and personal values were not being expressed in my work, and that conflict was increasingly taking a toll. I was also seeing the toll it was taking on my clients, particularly in cases involving children and child custody cases. And I increasingly started seeing a trial in a divorce or a custody case as an exercise in distortion. Grab onto one or two or three facts, run with them, and spin a narrative that had very little to do with the reality of people's lives. And I just saw people being churned through the court system. And then we set them loose. Maybe they, quote unquote, won the case. But then they have to go and co-parent with somebody whom they have made into an enemy by making accusations and pleadings in court. And I just was so frustrated with that, but I also felt trapped. I was a solo practitioner and still am, and I'm the sole support of my family, so I needed to find a way to make a living and feel that I could let my spirit be alive as well. So I went to this IAHL Holistic Lawyers Conference. It was in Vermont, and that's actually where I met you as well for the first time. And it was very interesting to me in so many ways. I met this really sweet, quiet man that I sat next to at a lunch one time. And he wasn't saying much, so I tried to talk to him and draw him out, and found out his name was Stu Webb, and he did this thing called collaborative law, which fascinated me. And I remember thinking at the time, well, that's interesting. And I'm not sure it's for me. I don't think I have the patience to do this, but I'll tuck it away somewhere and maybe think about it again later. And the other thing that struck me at this conference is that it was the first time I went to a conference of lawyers where I felt like one of the more lawyer-like people at the conference, which was a revelation, which was kind of fun. Usually I felt I was on the edge, and everyone else there was more lawyer-like and into being the lawyer persona, and this was a whole different crowd, so that was an eye-opener for me as well. I left that conference full of ideas, and then got sucked back into my practice. I had trials going on, I had a lot of work to do, and I sort of put it on the back burner. And then the next summer, I had a custody case from hell. One of those where you see the children being shredded in front of your eyes. You have depositions, you have a law guardian who seems to be drawn into the conflict instead of representing the children. And I also remembered that I had met someone called Kim Wright at this conference, and she'd said something about coaching, and I really had no idea what that was. But I thought, well, maybe I should check it out. So I gave Kim a call and started my journey of trying to transform my practice into what it is now. And what really helped me so much in your coaching is to step outside that lawyer mind of all the things that can go wrong and all the risks and downsides, and dream about what is possible. And I was very much caught in that mind frame of, I could think of 100 reasons why I couldn't change my practice, why I couldn't stop litigating. And you just always put out that possibility, though, what if it works? What if? Why not try it? So that inspired me to go and attend a training. And I went to a training in Rochester, New York. It's about a 2-hour drive from Ithaca. And the night before I went on this training, we have a lake cottage, which is a little closer to Rochester than where I live in Ithaca. And I spent the night there by myself and just spent some time at the lake. And I had this incredible dream of horses galloping down a mountainside in the snow. And it's one of the most beautiful images I've ever seen in my life. I had no idea what it meant, but I thought it meant that this was probably a good idea. So I went to this training and just caught fire. I just was so excited. It was a 2-day training, Sue Brunsting and Marion Korn. And went back to Ithaca convinced that this is what I wanted to do. All my skepticism and reluctance evaporated somewhere between the first and the second day of the training. And then, of course, as is the common tale, I went home and I had nobody to play with. So I went and met with a trusted friend, Bill Selden, who unfortunately has since died. He had cancer a few years later. I sent him an article or two. I called him and I said, Bill, what do you think? He was really enthusiastic. So I went over to his office and we pulled out the yellow pages. And we went through the list of attorneys in our community and handpicked a small number of people that we thought might be open to this idea. Then I sent all of them a couple of articles as well, followed up with phone calls. And there was a core group of 6 of us that really felt that this was possible. We started meeting Friday afternoons at 4 in a coffee shop and just talking about, can we do this, how would it work? So in the spring of 2003, I arranged the training with the help of others in my group and brought trainers to Ithaca. I found that you really, the mountain sometimes needs to go to Muhammad if you want something to happen. So we did that. We didn't have enough people in our community to cover the cost, but invited people from other communities, and they came. So we had just enough to make it work. And so April 2003, we got trained. A few days later, my colleague Robin Masson called me up all excited and said we had our first case. And since that time, I've done more than 50 collaborative cases and learned to make space for collaborative work in my practice. I stopped taking litigated cases and took that risk, and somehow the time got filled up with collaborative work.